What if the man you loved, trusted, and built your entire life with carried a secret so devastating that it was revealed not while he lived, but at his funeral? This is the story of Madison Hale, a woman from Chicago, whose husband's death didn't just bring grief. It exposed a betrayal so deep it destroyed everything she thought she knew. But what Madison uncovered after the funeral was even darker than anyone imagined. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments. My name is Madison Hale, and until a few months ago, I believed I had everything a woman could ask for: a successful husband, a beautiful daughter, a home that was the envy of my friends. But looking back now, I realize that sometimes life gives you illusions, perfect little pictures that hide the ugliest truths. My husband, Daniel Hale, wasn't just my partner. He was my best friend. Or at least I thought he was. For 20 years, we built a life together in Chicago. We raised our daughter, Lily, watched her grow into a bright and stubborn teenager, and dreamed of what the future might hold. And then, without warning, everything ended. Daniel's death was sudden. A heart attack, the doctors said. He was only 47. One moment we were planning a summer trip. The next I was picking out a coffin. The day of the funeral felt like a blur. The church was filled with the scent of lilies, the choir's hymn echoing off the high ceilings. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues gathered, whispering their condolences, while I sat at the front with Lily's small, trembling hand in mine. I thought I was ready for goodbye, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. Just as the pastor finished his final words, the heavy church doors creaked open. My sister Rachel walked in. Rachel and I had a complicated history. She was younger than me by 3 years, but she'd always been reckless, jealous, and wild. Where I chose stability, she chose chaos. Where I built a home, she burned bridges. Over the years, we drifted apart, speaking only occasionally. So when I saw her striding toward the altar, her son Nathan trailing behind her, my chest tightened. She didn't come to mourn. She came to destroy. Rachel's heels clicked against the marble floor as she faced the mourners. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew steady, filled with something I can only describe as satisfaction. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her eyes locking on me. "But the truth has to be spoken today. Daniel wasn't just Madison's husband. He was also the father of my son." The church erupted in gasps. Whispers shot through the crowd like fire. I froze. My grip on Lily's hand loosened as the words sank in. Rachel stepped forward, pulling an envelope from her purse. "And I have proof. Daniel's will. Signed by him, months before he died. In it, he acknowledges Nathan as his child." My vision blurred. No, this can't be happening. She placed the envelope in my lap as if handing me a bomb. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was Daniel's handwriting, his signature, his words. "To my beloved Madison, I leave our shared home and assets. To Nathan Hale, son of Rachel, I leave a trust fund and acknowledge him as my child, to share equally with my daughter, Lily." My stomach turned. My heart pounded in my ears. Rachel's son? My husband's son. The whispers around me grew louder. My God, what a scandal! How could he do this to Madison? That boy looks just like Daniel. I looked up at Nathan, and for the first time I really saw him. His sharp jawline, his dark eyes, a mirror of Daniel's. Lily turned to me, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mom, is this true?" I couldn't answer. I wanted to scream, to call Rachel a liar, but the will in my hands said otherwise. Rachel didn't shed a tear. She didn't mourn. She just stood there, victorious. That night, after the funeral, I sat alone in Daniel's office, staring at his photograph. Rage boiled inside me. How could he betray me like this? How could my own sister? I thought I'd reached the end of my pain, but it was only the beginning. A week later, I went to Rachel's house. I had to hear it from her lips. She opened the door, smirking like she'd been waiting for me. "Yes, Madison," she said without hesitation. "Daniel and I had an affair. It wasn't just once. It lasted years. He loved me too, maybe more than he loved you. He just didn't have the guts to leave you. The words sliced through me like knives. Without thinking, I slapped her. The sound echoed through the hall. Rachel didn't flinch. She simply touched her cheek, smiling. Now you know what it feels like to lose. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through Daniel's office, searching for answers. My hands trembled as I pulled open drawers, scattering papers across the desk. Then I found it. A hidden envelope tucked inside a locked drawer. Addressed to me, my heart raced as I ripped it open. Madison, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. There are things you don't know. Things I couldn't tell you while I was alive. Rachel wasn't the only one. There are others. I'm sorry. Daniel, I dropped the letter, my knees buckling. Others? He didn't just betray me with Rachel. There were more women. More secrets. I stared at the letter, my body shaking with fury. My grief was gone, replaced by a fire I had never felt before. Daniel thought he could leave me broken, humiliated, and powerless. Rachel thought she could take my life and wear my crown, but they were wrong, because this wasn't just betrayal. This was the beginning of my revenge. The letter trembled in my hands. There are others. The words seared into my brain like fire. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me with Rachel. He had lived a double life, maybe even a triple. My marriage, my family, my very identity, all built on lies. But if he thought he could bury the truth with his death, he underestimated me. I wasn't going to let him rest in peace until I uncovered every secret. I started with his phone. Daniel had always been careful, but in death he couldn't hide anymore. In his cloud storage, I found hidden emails. Some were harmless, work, bills. But buried deeper were messages from women I didn't recognize. I miss you. When can we see each other again? Does she suspect anything? One name kept appearing, Angela. I searched through bank statements. There were wire transfers to an account under her name. Thousands of dollars. Who was Angela? And how many more were there? I couldn't do it alone. So I hired a private investigator, Mark Lewis, a man with a reputation for digging up dirt. When I handed him Daniel's letter, he raised his eyebrows. You're ready to open Pandora's box, Mrs. Hale? I don't care what it takes, I told him. I need the truth. 2 weeks later, Mark returned with a thick file. Inside were photos, receipts, and addresses. Angela wasn't just anyone. She was a woman Daniel had been supporting for nearly 10 years. A woman with a son, Daniel's second illegitimate child. The boy looked to be around 8. My stomach churned. My daughter Lily had a half-brother she never knew existed. But the file didn't end there. There was another woman. And another, each with stories of Daniel's charm, his promises, his lies. By the time I closed the folder, I realized my husband had left a trail of destruction across the city, and I was standing in the ashes. As if things weren't bad enough, Rachel wasn't satisfied with humiliating me at the funeral. She started flaunting her new role. She posted pictures of Nathan with captions like, "Proud of my son, finally recognized by his father," neighbors whispered. Friends avoided me. Even Lily pulled away, angry and confused. One evening, Rachel came to my door uninvited. "You can fight it all you want, Madison," she said, sipping from a glass of wine she'd brought herself. "But Nathan has as much right to Daniel's legacy as Lily does. Maybe even more." I clenched my fists. "You've taken everything from me. But I swear you won't win," Rachel smirked. "Sweetheart, I already have." But she was wrong. Mark, the investigator, wasn't just good at finding secrets. He was good at finding leverage. One night, he handed me a USB drive. "Watch this." On the screen, footage played. Rachel, in a hotel room. With a man who wasn't Daniel, recently. "Your sister likes to play the victim," Mark said, "but she's no saint. And from what I've found, she's been misusing Nathan's trust fund already. If this comes out, she could lose everything." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Rachel thought she had cornered me. But now I had ammunition. I began carefully. First, I confronted Daniel's lawyer. "I want every detail of Daniel's estate," I said. "Every clause, every loophole." The The lawyer hesitated but eventually admitted, if Rachel mismanaged Nathan's inheritance, custody of the trust could be transferred. That was my opening. Next, I visited Angela, the woman with Daniel's other child. She lived in a small apartment, clearly struggling. At first, she was defensive, but when I showed her the will, her eyes widened. Daniel promised he'd take care of us, she whispered. But he never put it in writing. I leaned forward. Help me expose Rachel. In return, I'll make sure your son gets what he deserves, she agreed, piece by piece. I was building my army. The final blow came during a family court hearing, called to finalize the distribution of Daniel's estate. Rachel arrived in designer heels, smirking as always. Nathan sat beside her, confused but obedient. The judge began reviewing the documents. Rachel's lawyer argued fiercely for Nathan's rights. That's when I stood up. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. There is more you need to see. I handed over Mark's evidence. Rachel's misuse of funds, her infidelity, her reckless spending. And then, with dramatic timing, I presented Angela and her son. The courtroom erupted. Rachel's face turned pale as the judge examined the files. This changes everything, he said. Until a full investigation is complete, Nathan's trust will be frozen. And as for these new revelations, we will need DNA testing. Rachel lunged at me outside the courtroom. You bitch! You ruined everything. I looked her in the eye. No, Rachel. Daniel ruined everything. I'm just finishing it. Weeks later, DNA confirmed what we already suspected. Angela's son was Daniel's. So was another child in the file Mark had uncovered. Daniel hadn't just been unfaithful. He had built entire lives behind my back. Rachel lost control of Nathan's trust. Angela received a settlement, and I walked away with the house, the assets, and my dignity. But the real victory wasn't money. It was watching Rachel's smug smile vanish. I wasn't the same woman I had been at that funeral. Back then, I was broken, humiliated, drowning in betrayal. Now, I was sharper, stronger. I had taken Daniel's lies and Rachel's cruelty and turned them into weapons. Did it heal the wounds? No. The scars of Daniel's betrayal will never fade, but I wasn't a victim anymore. I was Madison Hale, and I had survived. If you liked my story, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with as many people as possible. Thanks for watching.